The parable we are about to explore comes straight from the pages of Scripture. Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. Jesus does not give any of the characters' names. They are simply 10 virgins, 5 wise and 5 foolish. But to help us feel the weight of this story more deeply, to move it from the pages of ancient text into the beating heart of human experience, we are going to personalize it today. We are going to give these women names, faces, and a village to live in. The names are not stated in the Bible, but the truth they carry absolutely is. So settle in, open your heart, and let the story do what Jesus always intended parables to do. Find you exactly where you are. The night Miriam missed the wedding was the night she stopped being a girl and became a woman who understood what it truly meant to be ready. She had grown up in the village of Bethany, not the famous one near Jerusalem, but a smaller cluster of stone houses and dusty courtyards where goats wandered in the afternoons, and old men played games with pebbles under the sycamore tree. She was the third daughter of a widow named Hannah, and from the time she could walk, she had been told that in this life, timing was everything. Her mother said it the way other mothers said, "Wash your hands," or "Respect your elders." Timing is everything, Miriam. Everything. But Miriam, like most people who are told important things too often, had stopped actually hearing it. The wedding she was invited to was the grandest thing to happen in their village in years. Caleb, the eldest son of Ezra the merchant, was marrying a beautiful girl from a neighboring town, and the celebration was expected to go on for days. 10 young women had been chosen as the bridal party, the virgins who would wait with their lamps and escort the groom into the wedding feast when he arrived. It was an honor, the kind of thing girls spoke about for years afterward. I was there. I carried my lamp. I walked him in. Miriam was one of the 10 chosen. So was her cousin Leah, and her friends Naomi, Ruth, Dinah, and 5 others whose names are not as important to this story as what they carried in their hearts, or failed to carry. The day of the wedding was golden and warm. The women dressed in their finest linens, braided their hair with colored thread, and gathered at the appointed place just outside the groom's house as the sun began its long descent. Their oil lamps flickered beautifully in the early evening. Someone had brought pomegranates. Someone else had brought a small drum. And they sang wedding songs while they waited, their voices rising and falling like birds. Now here is where the story becomes interesting. Here is where it ceases to be about a wedding and becomes about something much larger. The groom did not come at sunset. He was delayed, as grooms sometimes are, for reasons that have nothing to do with the bride, and everything to do with negotiation, tradition, a father-in-law who wanted one more round of blessings, a road that was longer than expected. This was not unusual. This was simply how things went. The 10 young women knew this going in. They had been told, he may come early, he may come late. Keep your lamps burning. Stay ready. As the hours stretched and the stars multiplied overhead, the singing stopped. The pomegranates were eaten. The drum went quiet. One by one, the young women began to nod, their heads drooping like flowers at the end of a long day, until all 10 of them had fallen asleep beneath the velvet bowl of the night sky. Now while they slept, 5 of them, let us call them the wise ones, though in the moment they simply seemed cautious, perhaps even a little boring to the others, had brought more oil than they thought they would need. Extra flasks, tucked beside them like quiet insurance. Not because they were afraid, but because they understood a simple thing. Readiness is not a feeling. Readiness is a preparation. The other 5, and Miriam was among these, because this is her story, had brought exactly enough oil. Maybe even slightly less than enough, because the flasks were heavy and the evening seemed so certain. And surely, the groom would arrive before their oil ran out. Surely. They had been so confident, in the surely, of it all. It was past midnight, when the cry split the darkness like a sword through silk. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Every woman startled awake, heart hammering, reaching immediately for her lamp. And in that wild, disoriented moment between sleep and waking, Miriam experienced something she would never forget. The cold, sinking terror of a flame that has gone out. Her lamp was dark. The oil was spent. Around her, she heard the same panicked sounds from 4 other women. The scrape of empty flasks. The sound of breath catching. Leah whispered something sharp and desperate under her breath. But the other 5, the ones who had seemed so overly cautious, so unglamorous in their preparedness, were already trimming their wicks, their lamps blazing back to life with a confidence that filled the night around them with warm gold light. "Give us of your oil," Miriam said. She didn't even feel embarrassed yet. There was no time for embarrassment. Only urgency. "Give us some of your oil. Our lamps are going out." And what happened next was not cruelty. This is the part that people misunderstand when they hear this story. When the wise women looked at their friends, their cousins, their neighbors, the girls they had grown up with, and said, "We cannot," it was not because they didn't care. It was because they understood that some things cannot be shared at the last moment. They said it gently, those wise women. "There is not enough for us and for you. Go instead to those who sell and buy for yourselves." But here is the mathematics of midnight. The merchants were asleep. The market was dark. And the journey to find oil, to find the one sleepy trader who might open his door to a girl with desperate eyes and coin pressed into his palm, took time. And time, at midnight, at the moment the bridegroom has finally arrived, is the one thing that cannot be borrowed or begged. Miriam ran. That is the honest truth of it. She gathered her robes and she ran through the dark streets with the other 4, their feet slapping against cold stone, their hearts wild with hope that they might still make it, that they might still find oil and return in time, that the door would still be open when they came back with their lamps lit and their chests heaving and their apologies already forming on their lips. She found oil. She did. A trader who lived at the edge of the village, woken by her pounding, sold her a small flask with the irritable generosity of a man who has learned that sleep is always interrupted by someone else's emergency. She filled her lamp with hands that were not quite steady. She lit it. It was beautiful, that small flame. But beautiful, too late. When she returned to the wedding hall, the door was shut. Not angrily shut. Not permanently shut in the way of a heart that has decided never to open again, but shut in the way of a moment that has passed. Shut the way the last seat on a boat is taken when you arrive at the dock, not to punish you, but simply because the boat is full, and the water is moving, and waiting is a luxury the current will not afford. She knocked. They all knocked. The 5 of them. Their knuckles against the heavy wood, their voices small against the music and laughter rising from inside. "Lord, Lord, open unto us." And the voice that came back from within, measured, neither cold nor warm, simply true, said the words that would hollow out a place in Miriam's chest for the rest of her life. "Verily I say unto you, I know you not." She stood there for a long time. Long enough for the music to change key inside, for a burst of laughter to rise, and then settle. Long enough for Leah to sit down on the step and press her face into her hands. Long enough for Miriam to understand, truly understand, what had happened. Not just tonight, but in the months of her life that had led to tonight. She had known the groom was coming. She had believed it. She had been invited, had been chosen, had dressed beautifully and sung the songs and been present at the beginning. Her faith in the event had never been in question. But faith in a thing is not the same as preparing for it. She had trusted in the feeling of readiness, rather than the substance of it. She had assumed that the oil she had was sufficient, because sufficient was all she could imagine needing. But the bridegroom had not asked what she had imagined. He had only asked what she had brought. This is not a story about failure. Or rather, it is not only a story about failure. It is a story about the space between knowing and doing, between believing and preparing, between the warmth of invitation and the weight of responsibility that every invitation carries. The 5 wise women were not better people than Miriam. They were not more devout, or more beloved, or more deserving. They had simply asked themselves one question that Miriam had not. What if he comes later than I expect? What if I need more than I think? Miriam grew old in that village. She married, raised children, sat under the sycamore tree with the old men in her final years. And whenever a young woman in her family was preparing for something important, a journey, a commitment, a season of waiting, Miriam would take her hands, look at her steadily, and say the thing her mother had said, but differently now, charged with the specific weight of memory. Fill your lamp all the way. Not halfway. Not almost. All the way. Because the hour you do not expect is the hour that will come, and you will not have time then to go looking for what you should have gathered in the quiet days before. She never blamed the 5 wise women for not sharing. She came to understand that they were not being selfish. They were being honest. You cannot give someone else the preparation you made for yourself. You cannot transfer readiness the way you transfer a coin from one palm to another. It lives in you, or it does not. It was built in the days of waiting, or it wasn't. And when the midnight cry comes, and it always comes for every soul in one form or another, the only question is whether your lamp is full. The door that closes is not the end of the story, but the oil you failed to carry is the beginning of understanding why it closed. Be ready. Not almost ready. Not planning to be ready. Not feeling ready in a general, comfortable way that asks nothing of you on an ordinary Tuesday. Ready. Because he cometh. And the night is longer than you think. And the oil you have right now, tonight, in this moment, in the ordinary and unheroic quiet of your current life, is either being gathered, or it is not. That is the whole of the parable. That is the whole of the warning. That is the whole of the invitation, extended to every soul who has ears to hear what the midnight cry is actually saying. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. What is in your lamp?